Hello and welcome to this episode of ECPG Live. Our topic today is responsible gaming. My name is Tana Russell. I am the Assistant Director with the Evergreen Council on Problem Gambling. And this episode on responsible gaming is in honor of Responsible Gaming Education Month, which is the month of September. And I am pleased to be able to have a couple guest experts on this episode with me. You'll see in the top right, we have Cait DeBaun. She is the Vice President of Strategic Communications and Responsibility with the American Gaming Association. And also at the bottom of the screen is Dr. Jennifer Shatley, Responsible Gaming Executive and CEO of Logan Avenue Consulting in Las Vegas, Nevada. Thank you both for being here with me.
Glad to be here.
Thank you.
Excellent. So tell us a little bit more, if you don't mind, about your backgrounds and how long you have been in the doing work on responsible gaming. Cait, do you want to start?
Sure. I'm privileged to be here with Dr. Shatley, who's been a friend and mentor in this space since I joined the AGA 4 years ago. So the American Gaming Association is the casino gaming industry's trade association based in Washington, D.C. Our membership is comprised of the gamut of the industry, so online, brick and mortar, tribal, commercial, supplier, operator. We represent the breadth of the industry, and I had the privilege of joining the AGA 4 years ago. My background is in behavior change communications, so working on national campaigns to motivate healthy behaviors and using marketing techniques to do so. Joining the AGA over the last 4 years has been a wild ride, given just the roller coaster for the industry. 2019, we hit a new record for revenue for the year. Industry was thriving. 2020, closing all 989 casinos. And then we've rebuilt the industry to, remarkable heights the last few years as legalized sports betting has grown. And with that has our commitments to responsible gaming. So I'm excited to have the seat that I have at the AGA, leading our efforts on responsible gaming and responsibility broadly, including Responsible Gaming Education Month.
Excellent. And Dr. Shatley, if you don't mind, tell our viewers a little bit about what you do and how long you've been in the responsible gaming field.
Sure. Happy to join both of you. It's always a pleasure for both of you. So I am Dr. Jennifer Shatley. I'm the CEO of Logan Avenue Consulting, and I'm also a consulting partner with the Responsible Gambling Council out of Toronto. I've been in this field for 25 years, so quite a while. I've had the privilege actually of working in the industry at actually the company that created responsible gaming. They created the first responsible gaming program in the industry. So I have a 17-year history at Caesars Entertainment as their VP of RG. I've been consulting for 8 years. I've also been the lead consultant for the International Gaming Institute at UNLV. So I kind of look at this from multiple perspectives, and I think that's what's a little bit unique is I have an industry perspective and one in which I worked at a very proactive company, so I got to innovate and do a lot of first in the industry. So things like being the first to create a campaign to proactively engage with guests about responsible gaming, and then to try to motivate behavioral change through motivational interviewing techniques, which was unheard of in the industry, especially back in 2003 when we implemented it. I mean, it was highly questioned at that point, but now a lot of companies do that, and it's kind of the industry standard. The first television campaign that was devoted specifically to responsible gaming, the first technology that was used to track RG-related incidents. So a lot of the innovations I was proud to be a part of. So now I also look at this from an academic background. So I do have a doctorate in public policy. And I did work at IGI for some time. And now at RGC, I'm actually helping with the research they conduct. Although not an academic institution, they do conduct a lot of research around this topic. And then I'm also sort of an advocate as well. I've been the president of the Nevada Council for over a decade. So I look at this again from multiple perspectives and then try to bring all my different experiences to the forefront when I'm doing my consulting.
Excellent. And if you don't mind, because we are going to be using the term responsible gaming quite a bit in this episode, let's first define what that means. What does that mean to you?
Sure. And I think from a very broad perspective, what responsible gaming really is about using gambling for fun and entertainment, and understanding that you're going to lose over time. So gambling actually becomes problematic when people try to use it as a source of income, or when they gamble more than they can afford. So responsible gaming really is about what are the proactive steps that you can take to prevent problems from happening. So I think that's an important component, is that these are prevention programs. So sometimes they get confused with problem gambling programs. That's not what they are. The intent of these programs is prevention, and the target audience is the entire customer base, because what you're trying to do is prevent problems from happening. So what you want to do is target the entire customer base with responsible gaming programs, not those that you see maybe are problematic. So really making sure that when you're communicating responsible gaming, you're communicating to your whole customer base and not just those that may develop a problem.
That's right. I would add that it's, part of the everyday business practices of casino gaming companies. So the proactive education tools and investments that we make to ensure that there's a positive play experience and that, players are keeping this fun. The vast majority of consumers can gamble and gamble responsibly. And part of that is because of the education, the tools, and what is available on the kind of proactive prevention side and our focus on that. And then we also want to make sure, that on the other side of that, that if there's somebody who needs help, those resources are available too. So, RG is kind of it's becoming more and more of a talked about topic as a topic itself. We talk about responsible gaming. Some people say responsible gambling. Some people say safer play, positive play. I think at the end of the day, they all mean the same thing, and that's making sure customers are empowered to have a fun and responsible gaming experience.
Excellent. So it's something that both the industry can do to try to help educate their guests on how to gamble in a way that is responsible and as safe as possible to never end up having problems with it in the first place if they can, right? To keep it in the fun entertainment kind of place. And it's also something an individual can do in the way that they choose to interact with the product as well. Well, let's talk about Responsible Gaming Education Month. Cait, can you tell us a little bit about this, how it started, how long this has been going on?
Sure. So the Responsible Gaming Education Month is actually, while we're celebrating 25 years, it's 25 years of, highlighting our commitment to RG. So 25 years ago, the AGA started Responsible Gaming Education Week. And their original intent was around employee training and making sure that, there was a focused effort on helping employees know, what is RG? How can they play a role in it? And it's grown significantly since then. And I think that reflects the growth of the industry. So I joined the AGA 4 years ago. This is now my fifth RG celebration coming up. But even in the time I've been at the AGA, the interest among our members, among advocates, among regulators, among the gaming community has really heightened. And that's because, the industry has grown and as has our commitment. So today, when we talk about Responsible Gaming Education Month, it's about not only employee training, but consumer education and highlighting the efforts of the industry to advance responsible game education. And also a reminder that responsibility is everyone's responsibility. So it's not, just operators and suppliers and, the businesses of the gaming industry. It's advocates, it's regulators, it's policymakers, it's media. It's a conversation we can all be a part of in advance. And what I'm most proud of is the reason we moved from a week to a month is, after 2021, I think I had participated in something like 8 webinars in 5 days, and that was just the ones I was on, not to mention all the other great content during that week. And our members were having a conversation afterwards at G2E, what went well this year, what can we improve upon for next year, how can we continue to evolve this? And one of our members said, why do we just do a week? Like, why do we put this into just a week? There's months for other celebrations, Problem Gambling Awareness Month, and then any other kind of observance, they can be month long. And so we supersized it to allow more opportunity for the conversation to take place and for our members and for the industry broadly to shine a light on RG. And it is timely, especially as sports betting, gets busier with the NFL and college football season. It's a great emphasis point for us as we continue to, grow and elevate our efforts in the RG space.
And Dr. Shatley, do you have any other thoughts about Responsible Gaming Education Month? Does it become a busy month for you as well?
It does, it does. And it was a busy week before that, yes. But I do think, just to highlight some of the things that Cait said, I do think this heightened focus and this heightened awareness is what's really special now about this being Responsible Education Month. Back when I started, when basically RG Week started 25 years ago, there wasn't really a lot of focus on responsible gaming, and especially it was during that 1 week, and then it was like nobody ever talked about it again. Whereas I feel like now we have this month, and this is really where we highlight all of the things that the industry is doing, or the research that exists, or what regulators are doing, or how we're advancing this topic. But then I also know that the conversations are continuing. So there's a lot more going on than just this month. But this is the month where we can really highlight it. But those conversations really are happening across the board, especially with the expansion of sports betting. I think there's a heightened focus on, what is it that we can do to promote safer play, and how do we do this better?
Yeah, and we want to make it as easy as possible for anyone to participate. So the AGA puts out a toolkit every year with social media posts and messaging and ideas on how to activate that make it as turnkey as possible. So that's on our website, americangaming.org, and welcome any feedback. If there's other resources that would be helpful for future years, we want to continue to make a toolkit that is, useful and not just for the sake of making a toolkit. And then the other thing is we've outlined, because we went from a week to a month, we wanted to provide a little bit of structure. Historically, RG Week had themes, and while we've moved away from kind of overemphasizing the themes, there are weekly ideas around, the core areas we talk about in responsible gaming and consumer education, research, the illegal marketplace, and employee education. So there's different ways to activate throughout the month, and I'm excited to see what happens in just a few short days.
Excellent. And as you mentioned, March is Problem Gambling Awareness Month.
Mhm.
So we're in a similar situation during that month, and a bit of this one as well, but it supersizes the work that we do, to use your term, the work that we do kind of all year. But it's a great opportunity to really spread awareness across the country on these issues. Thank you for your efforts to continue with all of this awareness on this issue. So, why is responsible gaming important for the gambling industry? A person might find it reasonable, maybe obvious, why an individual
Mhm.
might value responsible gambling behaviors with whatever type of game or product they engage with. But from the industry, why is that important for them and their perspective and their growth and goals?
So I think to start, responsible gaming is part of our social and regulatory license to operate. Both operators and suppliers are licensed in every jurisdiction in which they have the privilege of operating. And with that comes certain requirements. So there's the pure regulatory requirement that we must uphold and meet and exceed in order to exist as a business. Beyond that, the social license to operate, we need to make sure that our customers trust our products, that they understand there's safeguards in place, and that there's going to be tools and resources to help them bet responsibly. As Jen mentioned, RG came out of the industry. It wasn't, pushed upon us. It was Harrah's many moons ago that created the first RG campaign around, betting responsibly, but also around underage and ensuring, people understand the legal age for wagering. And that was in part because as we grew as a business, we needed to make sure that, the communities we were coming to, the customers we were seeking to engage with, knew that we took this promise seriously, that, this is fun and entertainment. And we wanted to make sure that people understood that. And those who couldn't have fun with it had the resources, to get help as they needed it. And as it's evolved, well, sure, it's been integrated into, regulatory requirements, and that continues to evolve, which is fantastic. It's also the industry that's elevated our work. Jen led a lot of those firsts and is a pioneer in this. But I think as you look at the expansion of online gaming with sports betting and iGaming in some states, it takes us to a new level. There's more data and tools and technology available, so that we're continuing to raise that bar and make sure that customers can engage in our product in a responsible way, because at the end of the day, that's how we build a sustainable industry. well, this is entertainment, it's also a business. And, the long-term success of our industry is dependent on customers that play responsibly and engage in our product responsibly, and that communities, policymakers, and regulators trust that we're upholding that promise. So it's inherent in what we do, both because it's required, but also because it's, core to our organizations and how we want to operate in this space.
And if I can just add to that, so I think to pick up on sustainability, it's not just about customers and about the industry. I mean, it is also about sustainability of employees, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a multitude of reasons why it's important to the industry, and one I think is that it facilitates those positive experiences for guests, but also for employees, because it directly affects engagement, retention, job satisfaction. Because if you feel as an employee that every day you're dealing with someone that you think has an issue that's being harmed and you're powerless to do anything, that obviously affects your enjoyment of your job, and you'll eventually leave. Turnover is very expensive for any company. So understanding that you're not only creating these positive experiences for players, but you're also creating positive experiences for your employees is also a really important reason for the industry of why responsible gaming is such a crucial component of how they operate.
And as if you look at the broader economic situation right now and how, the public and consumers and policymakers and investors, grade and consider, organizations that they want to support and put their dollars into, whether it's a consumer placing a bet at us, using a slot machine, or an investor, adding funding to, allow a company to grow. These are things that are considered. It's no longer, are you profitable or are you, not. It's, are you profitable and how are you profitable? And so I think, those conversations are continuing to evolve in the broader economy and relevant to, the gaming industry as well, especially as we've mainstreamed over the last, 5 to 10 years. Gaming is, continuing to be seen in a different light. And I think our leadership is showing, not just on responsible gaming, but how we operate in communities and engage with the people and that not only we employ, but the organizations that we work with, whether it's small businesses or nonprofits, to help advance, communities and build them up.
And let's talk about some of those things that gaming operators might actually do to have robust, responsible gaming programs. What kinds of policies do they put in place for these? Dr. Shatley, do you want to start this one?
Sure. I'm going to speak to this from a different perspective than like the granular things. I'm going to talk about it sort of 3 things to keep in mind as an operator of when you're thinking about implementing. One would be make sure it's ingrained in the company culture. This isn't this little siloed program that's just a compliance program that you got to train some employees and then check a box and say, okay, we did that, we're done. This is something that should really drive every decision that you're making within the company of how does this affect consumers? Does this promote positive play? Could this have negative consequences for employees or for customers? And just really understand that this really needs to be part of everyday operation, not just ticking a box and making sure that you complied with a little rule. The other one would be make sure your policies are driven by science. There's a lot of good intentions, I think, around responsible gaming, especially when you look at regulatory interventions. And those aren't usually the best ways to do things. We need to make sure that not only what we're doing is effective, because sometimes we can put something in place that has absolutely no effect at all. And then so you're extending all of this energy and effort and money for something that's doing nothing. We want to make sure that what we're putting in place is actually doing what we intended. It's having a positive effect. And we also want to make sure that there's not unintended consequences. There's actually been examples, a couple of them, where probably even more, but a couple I could just name now, where we thought from a policy perspective, doing one thing would promote responsible gaming, when in fact what it did was actually cause problematic behavior in people that would not have had it had we not implemented that policy. As an example for that, I'll just give one. It was determined that the speed of the game, that was what caused people to develop problems. So they decided to slow the speed of the games. Well, the consequence of that and doing research was it caused people to actually play longer than they normally would have, and they actually spent more money and time than they normally would have because they had to play the game longer to get the same entertainment experience. So it created the problem we were trying to prevent, and people that would never have had that problem had we not intervened. So we have to make sure what we're doing is effective and is not causing the problem. And then the last one I would say is, think of responsible gaming programs and your employee training programs of how you interact with guests as another part of customer service.
Mhm.
So this is the hospitality industry. So, gambling, whether it's online or whether it's in a bricks and mortar venue, you're interacting with guests, you're providing a different experience, because when you look at gambling sites or casinos, they all pretty much have the same games or the same offerings. The way you differentiate yourself is customer service. How does the guest feel about interacting with you? Do they trust you? Do they enjoy it? All of those things. And responsible gaming should just be another component of that, of how are you taking care of guests and how are you making sure they have the best experience possible with you.
I would add, making sure it's not stagnant, drawing on the research, drawing on your own data and information that you collect on your customers to use for other purposes like marketing or forecasts. This is an ever evolving field. And I think more than ever, there's, funding invested in continual learning and research in this space. And so it's not something like, oh, got my RG policy, I'm good, here we go. And nobody, no operator today is thinking in that way, but continuing to evolve and reinforce this. And I think that's, part of what Responsible Gaming Education Month is about, that while we do this every day, here's a time in the year where, we can have more engagement on this topic and really focus on it as a priority for your organization. And then, if, moving away from the operator side of things, the supplier piece of it and how you build a product and design a game, to Jen's point, there's implications for that, and making sure that everyone from, even your receptionist to your, those employees that are on the gaming floor to VIP hosts to your executives, everyone needs to be trained in this and understand their role. And I think the more people get familiar with this topic and understand it in new ways, I've been excited to see how a lot of operators have introduced lived experience training into their training programs, because it puts more human nature into this. And I think the more we can learn, from people, the more effective our programs are going to be, and the more empowered our employees are going to be to advance an RG culture.
Excellent. So if I am a guest at a facility, how might what kinds of things might I encounter there that could actually be the result of RG policies?
So there's some things that are, purely required, like having some, technical information or, reminders around helplines, for example. I think people shouldn't realize that they're interacting with RG. That's, I think, when it's successful. So, if you're on the gaming floor and someone asks, "How you doing?" Have you, tried a different product or as part of the resort, or just having a conversation? I think that's when it is more impactful, so that a guest, to Jen's point, it's part of customer service. It's not, hey, did you set your budget and are you sticking to it? How's your wallet doing today? It's just having a conversation and engaging people around, how their overall experience is. And, if there's something happening or an issue that, needs to be discussed, it'll come up, I think, in a more kind of collegial environment than one that's like, hey, wagging the finger at you.
Right, and I think that seamless integration is something very important. That it shouldn't be this standalone thing, this responsible gaming thing that's over here. It should just be seamlessly part of the gaming experience or the gambling experience. I think part of that is historical. I think because the focus of these programs for so long has morphed into problem gambling programs, that every time we talk about responsible gaming, the conversation almost immediately shifts to problem gambling. I think that's kind of affected how these are implemented, how these are designed, because we're focusing more on a small population instead of the whole customer base that these things are intended for. The way responsible gaming programs are supposed to be designed, again, is as prevention programs. So from a training perspective, a lot of training I've seen talks about signs and symptoms, red flags of problem gambling, where and then that's kind of it. They don't tell you anything beyond that. It's just sort of these are the things, not, well, what am I supposed to do? When am I supposed to do it? How am I supposed to do it? Which are the skills that we should be training to employees. And we should be doing it whenever there's a risk identified, not when we think someone has become a problem gambler or when we think someone needs to exclude. It should be something that throughout the entire experience, by whatever means we identify risk. So that's either through an algorithm, perhaps online or in a casino venue, maybe listening for comments or cues that someone is experiencing some kind of harm related to gambling or some kind of risky behavior, and then having a conversation with that individual and trying to motivate behavioral change. Because what you're trying to do is identify that risky behavior before a problem develops and change that behavior. You're trying to get them not to develop a problem, not to be harmed. So you should be engaging with them. And the technique that we use, that we developed around our RG ambassadors, was motivational interviewing. And that really is about reflection. It's to get the individual to reflect on their behavior, reflect on what they're doing, reflect on how that's affecting them, and then change that behavior as a prevention mechanism. If you wait until someone already develops a problem, you're too late. Like, that's not what RG programs are for. They're supposed to be prevention programs.
I think you're seeing that more and more, in Massachusetts, for example. They have the game sense advisors in casinos at all 3 properties, and then MGM Resorts has implemented game sense across their kind of network of properties in both brick and mortar and online. And then in the online space, I think there's more opportunity to provide the proactive RG message to consumers, and it's being integrated increasingly. And whether that's through the apps and the tools available to set, time limits or, withdrawal limits or what that looks like, or just in the advertising, often, advertising is a frequent conversation that I'm a part of these days. And I think one of the underrepresented parts of that conversation is there's more RG advertising and conversation facing toward, targeted towards consumers and the public today than there ever has. And I think that's exciting that you have, FanDuel using their RG ambassadors to create ads that are on during NFL games, or you have, we have our Have a Game Plan, Bet Responsibly campaign with 30 partners, including the MLB and NBA and PGA Tour and NASCAR. And you can go to a NASCAR race and you'll see, responsible gaming messaging at the speedway, or during the playoffs, for the MLB coming up, you'll see content on some of their channels. And so I think that's what's exciting to me, is that RG is becoming much more integrated into how we communicate about our product and our offering, because we know that at the end of the day, this is how we build a sustainable marketplace and continue to, build long-term relationships with our customers.
And if I can jump in on that, so looking at this from a research perspective, I think one of the things we should try to understand, because there is, in a lot of jurisdictions, there's a lot of conversation about this inundation of advertising, especially with sports betting, that there's a lot of concerns around frequency, volume, all of that. So I think we also need to understand, when consumers see these RG ads, are they seeing them as different? Are they just seeing them as part of the noise of all this bombardment of advertising? Or do they understand that this is a different message, and are they paying attention to those messages? Are those messages resonating? So again, it's using the science really to drive, to make sure that what we're doing is impactful and it's not just seen as just yet another ad.
Excellent. I'm glad you mentioned that. And in our state, our council, ECPG, has launched in this past year a sports betting awareness campaign with a number of ads and PSAs and collectors cards and resources. And I think it seems pretty clear, but I'm excited as we get our metrics and analytics in on the impact of this campaign, because again, we don't want it to be something that just adds to the noise of more ads, but rather is a positive and hopeful message. Whatever stage a person is at, either in the early stage and gambling responsibly and a few
Mhm.
tips is all they need, or maybe starting to deal with some struggles and they need some help, and the helpline is there and available to them. I think one thing I'm really loving hearing you both talk about a lot is how much this is integrated in every aspect of what an operator does, and that the guest shouldn't be able to just spot, oh, look, they have the helpline up on the poster on that one wall back there. They check the box, right?
Mhm.
But they should actually be benefiting from these RG policies without even knowing it.
Mhm.
Right, from, like, what you were talking about with staff morale, liking the job they have, not just because of the environment and the skills, but because they know they work somewhere that cares about their employees, cares about their guests more than just getting money out of them, but actually wants them to be able to have fun in a sustainable way without struggling. And if they do see struggles, they can do something about this, and it's company sanctioned, and they're not going to get in trouble for it, and they're actually rewarded for
Mhm.
even recommending self-exclusion, right?
Mhm.
That is in fact a responsible gaming decision a person can make. The likelihood that they may actually have a conversation with a staff member goes up because the staff feels more
Mhm.
empowered, that I can say, hey, are you doing okay? Or hey, I heard you say this and that's concerning. uh, so it does seem to have unseen ripple effects. I don't know how you measure all of those in your data and research, but certainly it certainly has some positive benefits in all aspects. Yeah. All right. Well, lastly, let's not end this episode without also talking about what individual can do. We've talked a lot about what the agency can do, but if anybody is watching this and is like, well, what about me? What can I do to gamble responsibly? What are some guidelines and tips that might appear on an agency's responsible gambling guidelines or tips, or some recommendations you might have to an individual? Dr.
So,
Shatley, do you want to start with that one? Okay.
sure. And I think it goes back sort of to the definition of what is responsible gaming. And it really is understanding that gambling is entertainment, making sure that you're setting limits both in time and in budget, understanding that over time you are going to lose. That's the house advantage. That's what that means. So you're really just using it for fun. I would say, especially in an online environment, take advantage of the RG tools. They're there for a reason because they are helpful. They do help people, again, reflect on how much do they want to spend, how much time do they want to spend on this, how much money do they want to spend on this, and can help give them prompts of when they've reached those times so they can make a decision if they want to continue or not. So really, I think that's where, again, where we've kind of failed as historically with RG is with the tools. I think people see them as problem gambling tools, so they don't use them. So there's a very low level of uptake of RG tools online, when the reality is these tools are for the whole customer base because they're prevention tools, but there seems to be a stigma associated with them. So people think, well, I'm not a problem gambler, so I don't need these tools. The reality is these tools are for you, they're for everyone, to prevent problems. So I think taking advantage of the tools that are available is something I would stress for customers.
I would add part of the RG conversation is around, playing with legal regulated operators. The benefit of a legal regulated marketplace is that there is oversight, that there is these tools available, that there is investment in this space, that the tax dollars that are paid by gaming operators go back into state governments to provide RG and PG education, training, treatment. And so making sure that however you choose to gamble, you're doing so with licensed, regulated operators is a really important part of any RG conversation. Offshore sports books or skill machine manufacturers, they don't invest money in this space. They don't care, where their money's coming from or where it's going. And, I'd be remiss not to mention that as part of, key to responsible gambling and how you engage in this in a fun and entertaining way. I'd also encourage, as I mentioned, the AGA has our Have a Game Plan, Bet Responsibly sports betting campaign, which folks can learn about at haveagameplan.org. And that includes a map to every legal sports book by state. So you can find out, if sports betting is legal in your state and how to find an operator that is regulated.
And I think to a practical perspective from that as well, from a customer perspective, is if you have a problem on a regulated site, and I don't mean like a gambling problem, I mean any type of issue on a site that's regulated, you have a regulatory body that can intervene for you and that can be your advocate. If you have an issue on an unregulated site, you're on your own. There's no other entity that can intervene on your behalf. So if you can't get your money, like you can't get all of your money back to your banking account or whatever you want to do, there's nobody that can step in and resolve that situation for you. So when you're using unregulated sites, you are literally on your own.
Well, thank you. And let me just add some other few tips for individuals. We've mentioned use legal operators. Set your time limits, set your money limits. You're the only person who can set those for yourselves. Don't compare yourselves to what your friend or your family member likes to spend and how much they think is too much. You set your own based on what is comfortable for you and within your entertainment budget.
And
entertainment. And stick to it, right? Don't go back home and get some more and come back or put the debit card back in. Stick to it as a form of entertainment. It's not a job. It's not an income. It's not a supplement to your income. It's in the hospitality entertainment industry for a reason. So we want to keep it in the entertainment category of your budget, however much is appropriate for you to spend on entertainment. And one thing as a addictions counselor that really stands out to me as well is I try to teach people it's okay if we're having a bad day and want to do something that sort of relieves that a little bit, whether it's a good TV show you want to watch or chocolate or what have you. But if one particular activity becomes someone's only coping skill, if alcohol was someone's only coping skill, we would worry. If gambling is someone's only coping skill, we would worry. So I just caution people, make sure it is not your only coping skill and be cautious of if you're beginning to use it or tempted to use it to numb out and forget about things. It should be something that adds joy and that you can do among your other hobbies and recreational activities, not just if you're struggling. So that's a few different coping skills, but there's others out there as well that you may encounter. And like they said, there's tools even in terms of setting limits or tracking your wins and losses and things like that you can use. All right. Is there anything else? I think that's kind of a wrap, but is there anything else either of you would like to mention or discuss?
Just want to say thank you for having this conversation. We're really excited about Responsible Gaming Education Month and, seeing that, come together across the industry, both from gaming businesses to advocates to regulators and more. So it's going to be a fun September and hope to see you out there.
One thing that I would just to add to the conversation is as well, when you're thinking about developing responsible gaming programs or expanding your responsible gaming program, think about cultural differences. Think about how to personalize these for different audiences. So instead of having sort of a one size fits all RG message, start thinking about, what does someone, especially when we think about sports betting, someone that's new to sports betting in general, what are the things that they need to know as a new customer? Or what are the things that someone needs to know that's a regular customer, but still a recreational customer? What are things that people at risk need to know? So really tailoring the message, not only for that, but then also looking at different cultures. So, different cultural groups look at gambling different ways. They also look at interventions in different ways. So how do we make these messages and these programs relevant for everyone instead of just having one program and think that fits the case for all?
Great point.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you both. And thank you, everyone, whether you're watching live or on demand later. We appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.